Dr. England is now going to tell you some of the handicaps, the asinine roadblocks that the politicians have thrown up for the doctors and between the doctors and the patients. Dr. England.
Thank you, Tom. It was interesting to be introduced as coming from two towns. Of course, that's a necessary sort of schizophrenia in the world in which we live now, and I suppose one should become rather comfortably accustomed to it. It's always a pleasure to come out from the little rural areas into this large metropolitan situation. I always am thrilled to see the big buildings and so forth, and to see the hotels and the nice rooms. And I was fascinated, since I came here to talk about paper, to find that even in my room the toilet tissue is in tandem, which is an unusual situation to me, coming from a rural area. But I suppose not something that we should consider unusual, as close as we are here in Boston to the seat of the Eastern establishment and the home of the hero of Chappaquiddick. I suppose it should be in tandem. Whatever else we may be sure of, or think we're sure of, that occurred in that period of legislative lunacy that followed upon the coup d'etat in Dallas, we know that, number one, the printers of America have gotten fat, and number two, the great white father had succeeded in a large measure of doing a total enterocolectomy on a large part of the medical profession. For those of you who are not medically oriented, that means that he took away their guts. And that's just what has happened. They have, however, been replaced with paper, and we will look at some of the paper that is involved in this situation. Oh, I found another little piece of paper here, too, last night. The nice big restaurants in this city and all. And I got a fortune cookie last night, and it says, and you have to take out your glasses to see it, "You are a courageous person." Now that makes you feel good right away. Now, everybody that goes into the hospital has a hospital chart. Now, a naked sort of hospital chart looks a little bit like this, and that's not really too much paper. There are some interesting things in it, and this is private. This belongs to you, the hospital, but the information on it is private, or was. It no longer is. Anyone of the bureaucracy or any clerk in any insurance company is now privy to your confidential records. So that the risk of damaging your health, you better not tell your doctor everything anymore unless you want Aunt Susie down the street to know about it. Sometimes this is important, sometimes it's not. But with Medicare, other papers came into use which seemed to me to very nearly equal a hospital record. Now, first off, we have this beautiful piece here, and it's in several copies. The first one is yellow. I don't know if that has any particular significance. There's a white one. There are two blue ones. I've never understood that exactly. There's a very nice orange one here, right there. See, that's pretty. And then, as you might imagine, there is a pink one in the center, which, of course, is as it should be. Now, that's what the hospital uses this to get their money. Some hospitals get their money, others do not. The government is more interested in coming back and rechecking and rechecking and rechecking. Then we have this one. This is a state of Illinois form, which is interesting, if only because it's just one copy. Now, I don't believe I've ever seen one like that before. Usually, you know, there are all sorts of different carbons. It tells you where to put the patient's name in two places, and you can do it just exactly as on the green card. I don't have a green card since I'm not yet on welfare. That time may come. Then you have this form. This is another one of these forms that the doctor uses to get his money with the patient's help. And the trap that Curtis was referring to, the matter of assignment, is included in this little piece. It has just one little thing. It's just a little box. All you got to do is check this little box to sign away your soul. It's very easy. And there's really, it's relatively painful until you feel the hook. Interestingly enough, this only comes in 2 copies. Now, I don't understand that either. Hospitals also have to bill insurance companies, and they get their special forms for that. Again, we have the yellow and the pink form. That seems to follow throughout. There's a great degree of regularity. And I think, again, there's significance to that I feel it must be there that I may be missing. There's another one. This is another welfare form for Illinois. Now, this one does come in 2 copies. Now, why the one is 1 and the other is 2, I don't know. But that's the way it is. And again, we have pink and yellow. Repetitive. Now, either there is an awful lot of cheap pink paper, which I suspect is true, or yellow paper is easier to read, which I don't know about. Now, when Medicare came along, one of the problems was that the government had to make sure that you were really supposed to be in that hospital. This wasn't something that you and your doctor decided, or that your doctor decided, or whatever, but they were going to make sure, and so they had your doctor take an oath. He's going to certify that you are in the hospital for good reason. So we had to have a form for that. Now, this is the first form that came out. This is sort of an antique, and it's a little bit difficult to find these anymore. It's an elaborate form. And given the idea, you know, that no one knew what was going to happen, whether the law was going to be passed or what the rules were, it was rather remarkable that the day after the passage of the law, these appeared on the hospital charts throughout the country, furnished by Briggs Printing Company in Des Moines, Iowa. And Mr. Briggs must have gotten fat. They have a white copy, and we have a yellow copy. Now, this has been improved. I told you this was an antique form. This goes back to the very first, and that's been improved by making a shorter form in that it has no carbon, but it still has more spaces, but no carbon, so it's a help, I suppose. I never signed one, so I don't know much about them. There's a problem, though, in our hospital, because our administrator, he was held together by strings and some old gum and stuff. He wanted to make sure we all complied with this. So we said, well, we don't remember when we have to do all this certification business. And he says, well, I'll help you about that. I'll help you about it. So they went to the printers again. So at the foot of every hospital bed, you may recall, there's a little metal piece, and the nurse will slip in things in there that says this one's not to eat breakfast, or give this one 2 breakfasts. I don't know if that ever happens, but little notes to help in patient care. So our administrator said, we'll do that, and when you see that patient, we'll let you know that he's certified. So we went to the printers and we got this, which I think is nice, again, yellow. And so you got that certification. That's the first time now. Then you got to certify again if they're still in there, because we don't want anybody to stay longer. So then we have the 14th day recertification of hospitalization. This printer is doing fine. Now, suppose you're in longer than 14 days, then we have the second recertification, 21st day of hospitalization. And the printer is really going great, I think. Then, if you're in longer than that, the third recertification, 30th day of hospitalization. Now, things are getting tough because you still might be in the hospital, and then the printer really, this takes the record for getting the most amount of big print on small card, I think. That's the 4th recertification, 30th day following 3rd recertification. I suppose all that is still going on. I never got along with this sort of thing very well. and consequently was always in difficulty. It was a little like the situation where Carlinville, incidentally, is the only town of that name in the whole world, for whatever that's worth. I mean, it's unique, and so I not only was living in a town that was one of a kind, but it turned out that I was pretty much one of a kind there, too, which had its advantages. Immediately, of course, the rationing aspect that has been brought up came into play. We can't be giving all this care to these people that need all this care because some of them may not need this care, which is government logic. So we will have to have a utilization committee which will police this. Now, utilization committees as such have been used for doctors' educations in the past, but this one was for a different thing. This really amounts to an insurance claims review committee, so that the doctor is going to be working for the insurance company. At least in my estimation, that's the way it worked. I never got to serve on one, and so I don't know. In spite of the fact that in our little hospital there's only a staff of 6, I never really got on that committee. I wrote what I thought would be a good set of rules for it, which didn't help me any, because one of the things we had to define was what was an extended stay, was 14th day, 30th day, all this sort of thing, and it seemed to me unfair to put things down like that, and so I thought that we would define an extended stay as that period of time which exceeds the care for a similar case in a federally operated institution. Well, you know about how far that went. So, we didn't get that job done either. Eventually, in medicine, in the situation medicine is in, and with the philosophy that is represented by the people at this table, you come to a point where you're guilty of fraud in your practice, it seems to me. The controls are such, or the foreseeable controls are such, that you can no longer represent yourself as having independent judgment in the care of your patient. If you continue to practice medicine under those circumstances, I think that this is fraud. Naturally enough, I came to that point not too long ago and did indeed quit. I could no longer run my practice the way I thought it should be run due to the government regulation of one thing or another. Perhaps my hide is not as thick as it should be, but it was no longer my practice, and if the government wanted so badly, they can have it. There are other things one can do. But the problem that medicine faces is that rather than medical organizations being part of the solution, by and large, they're part of the problem. Back in 1966, I found this little thing that's floating around there, and it said, physicians, along with dentists, osteopaths, optometrists, are about to be offered federal help they have long pleaded for, assistance in starting up group practices. Now, again, we're in the semantics thing. This is in 1966. Now, they're talking about group practice one way. Actually, it was offered for fee-for-service groups, and I'm sure that there are some fools that took it. And the idea being, though, that the government's going to help you. Now, there was a time when this was unpopular in medical organizations, but now we find that the president of the AMA, that is the immediate past president, who incidentally is in hock to the government for some $80,000 for a new operating room in the hospital he was in as a grant. Isn't that neat? The young doctors, especially those entering practice from now on, will opt for group practice. He noted, however, that not every physician will want to practice in a group, and for some, it would not be practical. As for the type of payment plan in group practice, he declared, surely people should have a choice. And what this means is another way of the AMA saying, we're no longer standing firm on fee-for-service. We'll take the money any way we can get it. And that's characterized their, seems to me, and in my opinion, characterized their behavior for the last 15 years anyway. I think that we probably don't have to worry about total socialization, at least in a sense, we don't. Enough of the good doctors will quit that none of us will be around to suffer through it. And I don't believe, really, that there's enough paper in the world to support it. Thank you.
Bob is always thorough, and he is always right. He didn't tell you exactly, though, what these silly certification forms mean. When a doctor and a patient agree that the patient should be in the hospital for further definitive treatment with or without surgery, that should be enough. And the fact that they are in the hospital should be certification enough that the doctor feels that it is necessary that the patient be in the hospital. If he were lying, certainly he's not going to say she's not supposed to be in there, but I put her there anyway. If he's going to lie about that, he'll lie about the reason that she's in there. But he's got to sign a little form saying that it is necessary that she be in the hospital because she, for example, had a broken hip. 7 days later, he's got to recertify that it's necessary that she be in there because she still has a broken hip. About 21 days later, with or without a complication, he's got to certify that it's necessary that she be in the hospital because she still has a broken hip. Now, somewhere along the line, the hip is not really broken, but it is not really healed. Some of these have callus formations to heal the break fairly rapidly. Others, with other conditions, they go on to a non-union and they don't heal, and you've got to have surgical intervention to nail or bridge the gap, bone graft or something of that sort, but you've still got to certify that she needs to be in the hospital because her hip is still broken. Now, that's about as asinine as anything I can think of.